right, as we continue to track the World Health Organization's effort to usurp authority and power from sovereign nations, yesterday the Intergovernmental Negotiating Body published their latest draft of the proposal for negotiating text of the pandemic agreement. Now that is a mouthful, I know, but that's what these bureaucrats do. But you need to pay attention to this because this is dangerous stuff. Now this version will be considered by the 7th meeting of the Intergovernmental Negotiating Body next week at the WHO headquarters in Switzerland. Now, the WHO's end goal of this effort, which has been going on for a while, and it will continue up until next May, is to be fully empowered to make decisions on our behalf without our consent. Joining me now to discuss this is Jim Roguski, a member of the Law and Activism Committee at the World Council for Health. Jim, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Well, thank you very much for having me. And, you are correct. It is a mouthful. But the fact that it's not referred to as a treaty is actually very important because what they are setting up, and it's exactly what you said, is an ongoing series of what they call the Conference of the Parties that would meet pretty much forever. And the idea is they're trying to hash out an agreement just to have an agreement so that they can pat themselves on the back and say, oh, look what, great work we did. I was actually a little bit surprised that from the last version, this version got smaller by about 12 pages. And so what they're doing is trying to reach a basic fundamental agreement to set up a bureaucracy that would meet on an ongoing basis year after year after year to impose protocols that, as you said, we wouldn't have any say over the matter, much like the Framework Convention for Climate Change that was agreed to by the United Nations back in 1992. That ongoing system of, forever unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats making decisions on our behalf without our input is something that's just absolutely not acceptable.
I mean, this is like a self-winding watch. Once they create it, it's just going to keep on going. So explain for just a moment. It's very, I read through all this. And so they create this Conference of the Parties, and then they're empowered to do forever whatever they want to do. And then it's just like Hotel California. For those that want to try to get out, they can't. It takes 2 years. You got to be in it 2 years, and then it takes a year for them to act upon it. I mean, the world could be eradicated by the time you're able to get out of this bad deal.
The thing to realize about the meat of what they're talking about, though, is that it doesn't have any resemblance to what people would think of as health. Right. It's really a financial, venture capital prospectus to literally get developed nations to invest money in infrastructure in developing nations to build out more laboratories, more testing facilities, more mRNA manufacturing facilities. You had mentioned, or your staff had mentioned to me, the Global Preparedness Monitoring Board. They put out a report, and they were tracking the mRNA manufacturing plants in Africa. And so what they're really looking for is not an evaluation of the mistakes that happened over the last 3 or 4 years. They're more than doubling down. They want to build the infrastructure to do more of what they did to us over the past 4 years.
Which didn't work in terms of stopping a pandemic or keeping people safe. It just took their rights and gave them more power. So what are the next steps here? Because I know December is one critical deadline that we need to be aware of. What are some other things coming up we need to be aware of?
So, they make it confusing because there are many different pieces of the puzzle, and there are at least 3 pieces. The one that we've just started talking about is their convention, which is on a little bit of a slower timeline. They're not thinking about having that completed until May of next year. There are 2 sets of amendments to the international health regulations, one that was adopted 17 months ago, and there's an 18-month period for every nation on the planet to reject the amendments that the Biden administration shoved through on May 27th, 2022. So the deadline for all of the nations on the planet to reject that just by sending a letter to the WHO. And I put together a page, which is rejecttheamendments.com, where people can download a letter, sign it, and just mail it to your congressmen, your senators. I wish I had a chance to talk to Senator Scott. I really want them in the Senate to pay attention and submit H.R. 79, or at least a copy of it, in the Senate. So those amendments can still be rejected, but there's another set that are currently being rewritten, and we hope to maybe get a glimpse of them the first week of December.
Jim, we're up against a break. This happens every time. But if one chamber were to send something to the WHO, could that derail the effort?
You know, I certainly feel that the senators and members of Congress should come together, understand this issue, and realize that they need to take action because their silence is viewed as consent, and that is just absolutely not acceptable.
All right. Well, we're going to continue to track it. You keep us up to date, and we're going to keep our viewers and listeners up to date as well. And folks, we're going to have an action item for you on this too on the other side of the break. Jim, always great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.